Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third installment of 5 in our 5-part series, No Job, Now What? Today's presentation is called Leveraging LinkedIn, Elevating and Optimizing Your Profile for Your Job Search. We got a great program for you today. We're still got a couple more people coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started now. Reminders, please mute your audio. I have you automatically muted when you came in, but in case you unmuted yourself, go ahead and mute yourself unless you're actually speaking or you're raising your hand and have a question for the panelist or the speaker. Turn off all your background noise, mute your laptop and your sound and stuff like that in your mobile. If you do have questions that you did not submit in advance through the survey for our speaker, go ahead and input those in the chat box, and we'd be happy to address those kind of as we go along. If it's something that's rather private, then you can message it to me directly, and there won't be any names mentioned, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Our agenda for today, we're going to do the results, share the results of the LinkedIn optimization survey. Then we'll do the actual LinkedIn presentation. We'll have panelist questions. We'll be able to ask those of the speaker as well as the panelists that were taken from the survey. And then again, any ad hoc questions that come up during the presentation today, we'll go ahead and address those. And then finally, the final Q&A at the end. So without further ado, so the survey results, this is question number 1 from the LinkedIn optimization survey. The question was, what is your experience level with LinkedIn? A full 50% said somewhat experienced, I log in occasionally. 38% said very experienced, daily user. 12% said not very experienced, I have a basic profile, but that's it. And nobody responded to the not experienced at all. Question number 2, how complete and up-to-date is your LinkedIn profile? 68% said all major sections are filled out and current. 19% said most sections are filled out, but could be updated a bit. 13% said minimal info is included, but it's kind of out to date or out of date. And 0% said that they didn't have a profile. And finally, question number 3, what is your goal on LinkedIn? 43% said professional networking, 25% job searching, another 25% said for business development, sales, or lead generation, and 6% said thought leadership as an industry expert. So what I want to do now is, since we've shared the survey, we'll share those survey questions, the individual ones for the panelists and the speaker. We'll share those a little bit later on. But our panelists today is Nick Reed and Imelda Bermudez from Travel Staff, and Brian Marcus, Eden Sleeger from Global Hospitality, and I'm Mitch Woolley, your moderator for today from eMarketing Associates. So our speaker today is Deborah Boggs. She's a LinkedIn profile optimizer, executive resume writer, and job search strategist. Her company is DNS Professional Coaching. And Deborah works with talented executives from all over the globe to equip them with the tools they need to stand out in the modern job market. In addition to serving as a trusted media source for national news outlets like the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Forbes, and NBC News, she has contributed to articles for career sites like Ladders.com, Indeed, and Monster.com, and has been a featured speaker for national and international events, as well as top-rated podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our speaker today again, Deborah Boggs. Take it away, Deborah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to meet everyone today and talk about LinkedIn and how to optimize it and get the most out of it for your variety of goals like we had just gone through. I was surprised by how many are using it for networking and business development. So we'll talk about all of those things. I'm going to start sharing my screen in a moment because we're going to go through all sorts of stuff together. All right, can everyone see me? The leveraging LinkedIn? All right, perfect. Okay, so thank you so much for the introduction, Mitch. Today we're going to talk about, really updating, optimizing, leveraging your LinkedIn profile to help bring some opportunities to you, to help network, to help with your job search. And to do that, we're going to talk about your LinkedIn goal. We're also going to talk about creating a standout headline, photo best practices, optimizing the about section, and then your experience, and then also some extra credit sections, which some of you may or may not be, using right now. So we're going to kind of go through top to bottom the LinkedIn profile and really talk about how to optimize it, elevate it, increase the professionalism. And this is, really about optimizing your profile piece. This isn't necessarily about networking, because it's kind of positioning you well to then start the networking and the job search and all of the other things that you want to do with your profile, but it's making sure that you've got the best profile possible before we get started with that. So to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, as of right now, a lot of people ask me, is LinkedIn important, or do I need it for my job search? And these numbers come straight from LinkedIn. They're updated as of 2020. And so as of right now, there's 700 million total members, 100 million members log in daily, and 95% of recruiters say that they use LinkedIn search tools to identify candidates. So as a job seeker, that's really, really important. You can also use LinkedIn to apply for jobs directly through the platform. Right now, there's 4.3 million jobs listed on the platform that are open. That was one of the big numbers that changed from when I had originally created this about a year ago, but that's all right. And then also just following people, you learn about a lot of openings. I know Nick has been doing a great job of posting a lot of job openings lately in the hospitality field. And finally, we're going to talk about completing your profile and having 100% complete profile, because that leads to 27 times more likely to be found in searches, relevant searches, whether you're, want to be found by recruiters like Nick, or whether you want to show up, if people are searching for someone who does the same type of business you're looking for, things like that for lead development. So that's why a completed and optimized profile is really, really important. And for those of you that are job seeking, 70% of employers are using social media to screen candidates during the hiring process, and about 47% of employers wouldn't call a candidate if they can't find a profile online. So it's great that you guys all have profiles. We need to make sure that we're easily able to be found. So, we can talk about naming conventions and things like that, but this is why it is important for job seekers. And then finally, I read this in the LinkedIn sales blog, and it really resonated with me on the importance of a profile. When buyers or employers are going to look at your profile, one of two things will happen. They're either going to gain confidence in you or they won't. This is your first impression. And so what do we want people to be taking away from our profile? What do we want them to know about us? And what kind of a professional, brand do we want to put out there? All right, and I will stop here and, take any questions if Mitch has anything urgent that has come through.
Nothing yet.
Okay,
Most of these questions you're going to probably address, so I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, in advance.
Right? Yes, we will address them. Mitch got a sneak peek the other day, so he's seen all this. Okay, so these are blueberries. I live on the coast of Maine. Blueberries are a really big deal up here, so that's why it seems kind of odd maybe for everyone in California. But, before we can create a standout LinkedIn profile, we really need to think about what the goal of our profile is. And you guys did a great job filling out the survey. It looks like a lot of you have a lot of different goals, job seeking, business development, professional networking, thought leadership. It can be a mixture of a lot of different things, but you can have a profile for a lot of different reasons. And so really being clear about that reason and your audience and what you want to be found for and what you want your audience to take away from your profile when they read it is a really important thing to know ahead of time. That way you can start building those things throughout your profile as you go along. So I want to stop for just a couple of seconds here and have you think about your overall goal for LinkedIn, who your actual audience is, who you'll be writing this for, who you want to be, to be reading your profile, ideally, and, maybe the top 3 things you want them to take away from that when they read it. So just to kind of, I want you to leave this presentation with an action item list of things that you can go and do and to update your profile immediately. So let's just take a couple minutes and think through some of those things. So again, overall goal, who your actual audience is, what industry, what job type, things like that, location, and then what you want them to know about you or to take away from your profile. So we'll do that for just a couple minutes here, a couple seconds, and then we'll keep moving along. And there is a handout, if you're sitting next to a printer, you can kind of physically go through this. Otherwise, just kind of take notes, because we'll be doing a few things together kind of live to talk through, so that you have things to take away and do immediately.
And Deborah, I just shared all of the webinar handout and resources with them.
Oh, perfect. Great. So while you guys are doing that, then real quick, I'll talk through some of the, so the handout kind of goes through some of these action items. And then there's a couple other things in there for you guys, a few guides, one on how to use your profile for your job search, a how-to guide on growing your network, and a how-to guide on using your profile for business development and lead generation. And then there's also a resource guide, because there's a lot of things that I'm going to mention while we talk through some of these things that you may want links to. And so there's a form in there, or a document that's just links to other resources that I bring up as we talk. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about headlines and profile photos. And I wanted to start by showing you, what this looks like in desktop and mobile, because I think, visualizing what this looks like will make more sense as we kind of go through. And I know you guys know what it looks like. It looks like all of you are at least, sometimes users, but it helps to just kind of get it fresh in your mind. So desktop and mobile, you can see that the background photo, which is that picture of Alice, I believe, behind Gregory's profile here. Then his profile photo. And then his headline for him, health, wellness, fitness industry expert, $100 million P&L ownership. He was a recent client of mine and a really standout human, and got scooped up really quickly. So I'm really happy for him. But you can kind of see, the different pieces of this profile that are really, valuable real estate, because everyone sees it. And then you can see in the mobile version, then you can see the first 3 lines of the about section. So just wanted to show you that real quick, and then we're going to take these kind of piece by piece. And we're going to start with the headline. The headline is a really, really important part of your profile for a few reasons. Number one, it's really important for, valuable real estate on your profile, because as we've seen, everyone sees it, whether it's mobile or desktop, if they're looking at your profile. And it also shows up anytime you comment or post something, or it'll show up if you like something, if they look at who liked it, it'll show your name, your photo, and your headline. And so a headline is important to make sure that people really immediately recognize what you do, the value that you bring. It automatically defaults to your current title and company name, but you can easily customize that and then update it. Sorry if you hear my neighbor's dogs. And so anyway, so a couple of formulas for this to kind of think through options, and we'll take a little time to do this together, but industry, job title, and your value or expertise that you bring is a really good one for job seekers. Or, as far as job title goes, it can be, hopeful job title, job title and the value to your audience. And then also title, company name, doing what for who. This is great for people that are using it for business development purposes, or thought leadership, or lead generation, to really show, the title and the company name then is important, and then also showing what you do. The other thing you want to think about with headlines is it's a really important part of the keyword optimization in your profile. It's the most heavily weighted section in LinkedIn for the keyword scanners and the SEO algorithm. So make sure to think about bringing in keywords that you want to be found for into this section. You have you used to have 120 characters to work with. Now you have 220. I'll just quickly point out that in my opinion, 220 is a little too long. It looks a little clunky. It gets cut off on mobile. It's just a little bit too much. I find the sweet spot is like 160. So, just kind of think about that. And we're going to take a little time to maybe make some of these on our own here for a minute, or jot down some options to optimize your headline. But here are some examples. I got a couple at Mitch's suggestion. I have a couple for the travel industry. And this would be maybe for job seekers, and then also one for someone who is maybe transitioning out of travel and into something else, like a sales leader who's maybe transitioning into another industry. So got a couple options here just to kind of show you what this would look like. Travel industry sales leader, $30 million P&L. I made these up, new business development, corporate events. So you want to be found for corporate events, incentive travel, you want to show that you work with enterprise level clients. So just, think about how to build a profile headline that'll really, immediately show what you do, the scope of your work, and the value that you can bring. So let me give you a couple minutes to think about that. Maybe jot some ideas down, feel free to pop them in the chat. Mitch can take a look at them. I can't see them, but Mitch can take a look at them. And any questions on headlines while we're kind of jotting down ideas?
Nothing yet.
Okay. All right. I will go back to the formula there again. Maybe that'll help a little bit as you jot down some ideas. Nick, do you have any Jeopardy music?
I don't have the music queued up. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Thought you were DJ extraordinaire.
All right, thank you for that, Nick. All right, we'll move along here. Okay, we're gonna talk about background photos for a minute. The background photo is a really great, easy way to elevate the professionalism of your profile. Really, you can use it to, show off the company that you work for, show off a little bit about your personality or something that's important to you. And it really helps you stand out beyond just the LinkedIn blue, like the woman at the bottom right has here. So, as you can see, the person in the top left is a recruiter. She's showing off the company. I don't know how much recruiting she's doing for Hilton right now, but made the presentation a while ago. The woman in the top right is the corporate communications for this company, and so she's showing off their fun atmosphere and fun work environment. And then the woman in the bottom left, this is a picture that she took at a pilgrimage that she went on. So it's an important photo for her. It means something to her personally. It just makes it look a little bit different. So there's a couple options to make these really easily. Literally anything is better than the LinkedIn blue as long as it's appropriate. So any texture, color, abstract background, anything that kind of gives it life. And so, you can get free photos from unsplash.com. It's in the resource document that Mitch shared with everyone, is a link to that. So you can just go into unsplash.com, look up background photos, and there'll be tons of them, ocean, bricks, abstract stuff, whatever you want. Or if you want to get wild and crazy, or if you're using this for business development or thought leadership, then I like to make a custom one in Canva. It's free. If you haven't used Canva before, it's like somebody described it the other day as graphic design for dummies. That definitely is where I fit in. I am not a graphic designer at all, but Canva is really easy to use, and you can easily use it to add your company logo, and that way your background shows off your company logo. So if you guys see my background in LinkedIn, you'll see I made it in Canva, and it's really easy to do. So there's a link to that in the resource document as well.
Deborah, someone has a question regarding those titles.
Oh, yeah.
So for a collective group of professionals seeking to offer their services to an industry, how does the headline formula play out?
So like, are we talking like a CFO, CMO coming together, and maybe an operations leader coming together and like looking to be a group of executives, or are we talking like a group of, say, marketing professionals who are, or are they like all part of the same company?
They didn't specify, and it was a private message, so they didn't specify, but it says collective group of professionals. So I don't know, again, if they're with the same company, and they all provide different roles, or if they're like a marketing firm, or if they're with the same, or with a bigger company. I don't know.
I can interject. Deborah, if I can help. I see a number of these. Obviously, Eden and Brian and Imelda do too, and we frequently see people whose title is enthusiastic marketing professional looking for new opportunities instead of director of sales and marketing, hotels. And so if you go back to the key words, they speak for themselves, but the ones that do the schmaltzy stuff, they just get lost in the roar. Plus, they're not good marketers. If they can't market themselves, it's going to,
You bring up a really good point I forgot to bring up. Thank you so much, Nick. I'll table Mitch's question just real quick and answer and speak to Nick's point. Yes, do not add looking for new opportunities to your LinkedIn profile. It's taking up really valuable real estate for keywords. I measured it the other day. I think it's like 22 characters. That's too much space. It's not differentiating you. Everyone's looking for new opportunities right now. It's not doing anything to really set you apart from the crowd. So really bringing the value that you bring to the table, making someone interested in learning more about what you do. And then, you know, throughout reading your profile, which we'll talk a little bit more about, they'll maybe see that you're open to new opportunities, but you're not blasting it out there in your headline and taking up valuable real estate. To Mitch's question about the headline, you know, from a keyword.
Wait, Deborah, before you go, I got clarification on that from Terry. So he's referring to a group of professionals from different companies and a broad set of talents.
Got it. Okay, interesting. From a headline perspective, I don't think it'll matter unless they want to brand themselves as something, in which case I would maybe think about using the background photo as part of their branding rather than the keyword, because the headline isn't going to be visible enough across to everybody's profile for anyone to really notice that they're all the same. The other option would be to create an organization on LinkedIn, not a group, but like a company page for all of their work. And then they can add it as an experience section then. And we can kind of get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of what that would look like, but that's maybe how I would, it's not necessarily a headline thing as it is a way to organize their collective basically, which I would do in an organization or a company page, which is not hard to do. It's actually a lot easier than a personal profile for those of you that haven't done it. So whoever had that question, feel free to reach out to me personally. We can kind of talk through options there. Okay, so profile photos. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this because it is really, really, really important. And I see it done well a lot and incorrectly a lot. And I feel like it's an important thing to talk about. So according to studies that they have done on what performs best with audiences, what shows up as the most competent, likable, approachable, professional photos, it's headshots that are close up to your face, smiling and looking at the camera, and some sort of a neutral, unoffensive background, something that isn't taking up too much attention. And so, you know, here's an example of a few that are doing it really, really well. You don't have to get a professional headshot done. I know this woman in the top middle, she's actually a really close friend of mine, and I know that she just had a picture taken of her in front of a piece of artwork in her dining room. So, you know, it's not something you have to spend a ton of money on if you don't already have a headshot or if you're looking for, if you're job seeking, but you want to take a photo with intention. Don't just pick one from a party. We're going to talk about things not to do in a minute. But I want to show you what to do first so you can really get an idea of what a good headshot that performs well with the audiences look like. In this bottom left-hand corner, or bottom right-hand corner rather, this gentleman with the blue, he actually, he customized his picture to have that ring around it, and it really pops on the LinkedIn profile. It really stands out. It looks great, but it was a super interesting way to make your headshot stand out. And so I included a video on how to do that for yourself in the, and you can do it in Canva, but I included video directions to that in the document as well with the resources. So check that out. I think it's super cool. I think I'm gonna do it to mine too. So these are great options. I also want to talk real quick about hiring a professional photographer. Again, you know, if you're job seeking, that's not really an expense that people want to go through right now. Totally understand that. I've included a link on a blog post on how to take a quality headshot at home. But if you're doing this for business development purposes, consulting, looking for lead generation, things like that, I really encourage you to invest in a quality headshot. I will say my headshot was not cheap, but I have had at least 3 clients call me out of the blue and say, I saw your picture and I knew you were the one. I don't think that's because I'm amazing. I think it's because the person who took my photo is amazing, because that never happened before I personally had it taken. So every time that happens, I send a picture or I send a note to the woman who took my headshot. So think about doing that. Now, I want to talk about some things to avoid. I know we spent a long time on that, but it is wildly important. These are real LinkedIn photos, and I pulled them down from things that I just want to illustrate that I see all the time. So this gentleman in the top left, he's really far away. There's multiple people in the picture. You're not really sure what's going on. And the reason it doesn't work if it's a full body shot is because your audience can't connect with you as a human. They can't see your face. And if they can't see your face, they can't really get, any kind of an emotional connection with you. So that one's problematic for that reason. Watch out for blurry photos like this one next to the one that's all the people. The other thing I want to bring up in this one's got two issues going on. It's blurry, and for the love of God, stop taking pictures in your cars. I don't know what it is about that. A lot of people do it. I saw a picture the other day, and I wish I would have pulled it down while I saw it, but it was a gentleman. He looked great. He was very well, dressed professionally, whatever, and he had a seatbelt on. And he was in the car, and I don't know what it is about taking selfies in your cars, but please, they're not appropriate headshots for LinkedIn. Please don't. So this gentleman next to her, clearly nothing says I have no idea how to use a computer quite like uploading this picture. It's not helping. It's really making him look out of touch with how to use technology, and you can't, connect with him because you can't see him. So the gentleman next to him looks really happy to be here, approachable, likable, excited, but it's so dark that you can't see his face. And that's really taking away from all of the emotion and the excitement that is in his face. Otherwise, it would be a pretty good shot. But think about, your lighting. It's a really big part of this. Okay, the woman in the bottom left-hand corner. What I want to say about this is only for ladies in the room. We have to think about what we look like when people can't see everything that we're wearing. I happen to know that this woman was dressed completely appropriately and she looked great in person, but in this picture, it looks like she's wearing a blazer with nothing underneath. And we don't want to leave anything up to the imagination for people when they're looking at our picture. We want them to know, yes, we're not topless in our LinkedIn photo. And so we want to keep that, we want to keep that under, we don't want to leave any the imagination or to guess. Okay, this cat, this guy's a software engineer. I don't know what the deal is with this cat. It was weird. It has nothing to do with his work. Don't put your pets up there. Speaking engagements. So the problem with this picture is, number one, is not close enough to his face. And the other thing is he's not looking at the camera. And so again, you can't make a connection with someone when you can't see their eyes. And so that's really where it is, what the issue is with this gentleman is, it's a great picture. He's dressed well. He's doing something professional, but your audience can't make a connection with you. And then finally, this woman, don't take a picture, don't just cut someone out of a picture and upload it. For her, there's an armpit in her headshot. Like, that's just not helpful. Your hair may have looked great that day, makeup was on point, but, really think about taking a photo for LinkedIn with intention. I have a friend / colleague who was in a wedding recently, and so she was having her hair and makeup done, and she just brought a change of clothes and a blazer to the wedding so that she could have someone take her picture before the wedding, all dressed up with the makeup and the hair, because she was already having it all done anyway, but she had her headshot taken for LinkedIn. I loved it. I thought that was a great idea. Anyway, I know we spent a lot of time on it, but don't be this guy with half a face. Just don't do it. Any other questions about headshots? Okay, we'll move it along. Oh, I went the wrong way, sorry. There we go, okay, about section. All right, this is the section that shows up at the top of your profile. So you've got your picture, your headline, and then the about. And I'm going to show you a couple things about how to optimize this, not only for keywords, but for readability. But the first thing I want you to see is that when people are viewing your profile, they only see the first 3 lines of the about section, and then they can click to see more. So you want to make sure one of 2 things. Either your about section is so wildly interesting that it just spurs people to click and see more, or it gets all of the pertinent information that you want people to know about you done in that first 3 lines in case they never do click to see more. So this is mine, and I only show you mine because I've optimized it, so it kind of, it hits all of the best practices because I'm constantly tweaking mine. But then this is a screenshot of what the whole LinkedIn about section looks like if you click to see more. So I want to talk a little bit about this. The About section is the second most heavily weighted section for keyword optimization. So make sure that you add keywords that you want to be found here in this About section as well. So for me, I have specialties include and then a bunch of stuff at the bottom. That stuff at the bottom, I don't expect humans to actually read. It's really more for the robots to catch the keywords and me show up in more searches. The other thing, whether you're job seeking or for business development, lead generation, whatever it may be, we need to remember that no one cares about us like we care about us, and we are literally the only people on the planet who are going to read our LinkedIn profiles word for word. Nobody else is going to do it. I could be wrong. Maybe Nick reads all of them. He just, you know.
Yeah, right.
Right, exactly. So you want to make it really easy to digest quickly. So small bites of content, bullets, you know, really easy to just kind of scan through quickly with the eye. You're not missing anything important. You've got it all there quickly because no one's going to read through it word for word like we are. Same thing with our resumes, guys. No one's reading giant blocks of text because no one cares like we do. So that's a little bit about how to optimize the About section. Now, if you're job seeking, so my About section is a lot about my business because my purpose for LinkedIn is lead generation and business development and thought leadership. If I were a job seeker, my About section would be more about my career experience. And so I would have my, you know, top career achievements and a little bit about, you know, a little overview of all of my experience to kind of make recruiters and hiring managers interested in my experience to move on to then see more. Which brings us to experience. Okay, so the experience sections. This is just one of them, you know, so you have one for each of your roles. Think about, you know, this is not a resume, so only include experience sections that are actually helpful in helping your career story. If you're doing something, you know, I know a lot of people are taking on part-time jobs that don't really have anything to do with their career right now. You can leave those out. I get it, you know, we all have to work, but, you know, that's not something that's really helping your professional brand right this second. It's really just adding confusion about what you might do. So make sure that what you're adding is relevant. And then also think about your headline. So right now my headline, co-founder, executive resume writer. So it's a little bit longer. That is not my title. That is way too long. But your title section is really heavily weighted for the keyword optimization there as well. So you can add more words to it to make sure you're showing up in more searches. And it also helps provide more context to what you do. So especially if your title doesn't really translate well to the rest of the industry, if maybe a company you work for has really creative titles or something like that, it doesn't really show what you do, you can add a little bit more context there. And then, you know, it shows a couple lines of your work. And then these pictures down here are articles and links and videos I've uploaded. I don't ever expect anyone to actually click on those and look at them and read the article and be wowed by whatever I had there. But it's more about just elevating the look and feel optically for people to see your profile. It makes your profile a little bit more sticky. People hang out a little longer, think, oh, she's got articles on there. She must be a big deal. I like beer and donuts like the rest of us, but you know, it's all about what it looks like online, right? The other thing I want to talk to you about is a lot of questions coming up really recently about end dates. So if you've been let go due to COVID, and I'm definitely open to suggestions from the recruiters in the room, what I am telling people though is leave present in your date, and then in the top line, you know, like the top little paragraph, put laid off in whatever month due to COVID. Leaving it open as present will make it so that you're still employed in the land of LinkedIn and you'll show up in more searches. As soon as you no longer have employment, you get cut out of a lot of searches, a lot of the recruiter searches and things like that you don't come up in anymore. And I don't want you to lie, and that's why you would put it in the little first paragraph blurb about being laid off due to COVID. But you don't want to have to either add a shadow consulting role that you're not really doing anything in, or things like that. So I suggest leaving present. Again, definitely open to suggestions there, but that's what I've been telling people. And so this is the experience section. Again, write it like you would your about section. You know, small bites of information, bullets, things like this. The other thing, if you're a job seeker, I tell people it's okay to be like your resume as far as like the content that's in there. You can make it more personal, conversational, things like that. But as far as the actual content and the accomplishments and that kind of stuff, it's okay to include that, because if you don't, recruiters, hiring managers may only see your LinkedIn profile. And so you want to make sure it can serve as a standalone resume if that's all they ever see. You can't expect someone to see your resume first, retain all of that information, and then go learn more at your LinkedIn profile. Again, no one cares about us like we do. So no one's going to be looking at all the information. All right, unless they're...
That's a good point. We have computerized systems that take people's LinkedIn profiles and turn them into resumes. So
good point, Nick.
We just push a button and it downloads. So it is very important.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah, and as that's the area that we spend certainly that I spend the most time on, is looking is on the experience level, and that's got to make sense before I'll even go back up to read the introduction. So that to me, that's one of the most crucial parts, is the experience. And I personally like it to mirror the resume, especially when you look at gaps and things like that. Yes. It's really important that those two kind of mirror each other, at least from my perspective.
Yeah,
great.
Brian said it right. We've laughed about this. The people whose resumes don't line up with their LinkedIn. It's amazing how many don't.
And I won't even spend more than 3 or 4 seconds. If they don't line up, then it's, I'm not going to, unless they're that phenomenal, I'm not going to spend that much more time digging.
Right. And you bring up a really great point, Brian. I tell my clients, in your resume and in your LinkedIn profile, make sure you're answering the questions that might come up for recruiters and hiring managers before you don't get the opportunity to answer them yourself. So, make sure they don't have to dig for this information. Why were you let go? What were you doing during this gap? Things like that. I know I'm talking a little bit about the resume, but make sure that, you want to make it so that no one has to dig for this information, because they're not going to in a lot of cases. All right, great. Okay, so education section. I won't take a lot of time on this, but I want to talk about a couple of things that I see more often than not. A lot of times people will either not link their college correctly, and so the university logo won't show up. And it just, again, it's about optics, so just check and see. If you just have like a little gray box next to your education, then try relinking, which is where you just kind of take out the education name and put it back in to try to pick the drop down that gets the logo next to it, because it just looks better. The other thing is make it really clear about what degree you earned, if you earned a degree. A lot of times if people didn't earn a degree, which is completely fine, life happens, I could get on that soapbox all day, but if they don't earn a degree, a lot of times they'll say, studied finance or something very generic, and that's to get around not having finished the degree. But then on the flip side of that, I see a ton of people who did finish a degree who aren't clear about it and say studied finance. And so recruiters and hiring managers are assuming that they didn't finish a degree because they didn't specifically say Bachelor of Arts, something like that. They just say finance. So make sure, or hospitality or whatever it may be. So if you completed a degree, make sure to include it. If you didn't complete a degree, my suggestion is just take it out completely. And we're going to get to the education and certification section of certifications and licensing in a minute. It's better in my mind to have the education section missing completely than it is to have something listed that's really bringing up questions and wondering what's true, what's not, what you actually did, things like that. People will more likely just not notice it missing than they would things that pop questions up. So make sure to be clear in education. And then the certifications and licensing section. This is a great opportunity, especially if you don't have formal education, to include some industry-specific certifications. And so the reason I say that is LinkedIn has a ton of really great options through LinkedIn Learning that you can do courses and then they come up on your profile, which is great, except make sure that they're industry related. You can take whatever you want, which is totally fine, learn anything during this time. But the other day I was talking to a job seeker, and one of her licenses and certifications, she's a job seeker, and one of them, the top one was salary negotiation. Not really helpful, showing that you've been brushing up on your salary negotiation. So just make sure that you're selective about what you choose to put in here. And if you have a certification that's maybe ended, you can still put, past or add the expiration date. That way it still shows up in there somewhere. All right, and a couple extra credit items. I don't know what time it is. Sorry, guys. Let me know if I'm getting close, Mitch.
We have plenty of time. We have 17 minutes, but they got quite a few questions we'd like to ask too. So.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yep. I just kind of had lost track of all that. You know, when you're having fun and all. So extra credit. Okay, recommendations. This is a really great way to add soft skills and social proof to your work. This is one of those sections that, you know, it's kind of, it doesn't help us to say, you know, detail oriented and a great communicator and a good listener about ourselves, right? Those are just very empty statements, but it means more if someone else says them about us on our profile, you know, great listener, whatever, good human, nice to pets, whatever. And so asking for recommendations does help kind of add social proof to your work. It also helps a little bit in the search results and how you show up in searches. The other thing is, you know, a lot of people got recommendations, like I see a lot of times they're from like 2009, 2011, and then don't have anything since then. So their recommendations are really, really outdated compared to the work that they do now. So if that's the case, you don't have to get rid of old ones, but maybe you reach out to some former colleagues, vendors, clients, you know, people you volunteer with, and ask for a couple new recommendations to kind of help, you know, freshen up that area of your profile a little bit. All right, and your extra credit sections. I want to talk about some of these. So under the accomplishments section, you can add publications, courses, then these are courses without certifications. So that's a separate section like we've learned. Honors and awards, languages, organizations. So this is where you'll add any of that extra stuff you might have. You know, languages, I see a lot of people put English in there. If you only speak English, you can leave languages out. It's assumed you speak English because that's what your profile is in. If you speak a second language, then I suggest putting English and that second language so that it's clear that you do speak both languages. Publications, this is another section where I also will add speaking engagements or you know, blog posts, things like that, because there's really no other place for that kind of stuff. You know, if it's like third party, you know, media mentions, stuff like that, you can add into publications as well. And so this is just kind of, and this is how it shows up. That's just a screenshot of what it looks like when you just have a big list of stuff one at a time. And then they can click in and look at more. I could be wrong. Maybe Brian's doing it, but I don't think anyone actually clicks in and looks at more. And then finally, the featured section. This is fairly new. It's only been out a couple months. You might have noticed it. You know, weird LinkedIn didn't ask my opinion. I don't love it. Because it came out of the About section and is now its own section where you can pick, I think, 6 either website links, videos, long form blog articles that you write in LinkedIn, images, anything that you want, or old posts that maybe are important to include. And so this actually appears right under your About section now. And so this is where, you know, if you, it's most helpful probably for people using it for business development, networking, stuff like that, because you can show some of your thought leadership right up front, and your company website, stuff like that. I don't know, it's kind of big and clunky, but it is a nice place to kind of add everything in one place if you have a lot of, you know, stuff to show and videos and websites and stuff like that. And then, okay. This is just part of the optimization piece. I want everybody, you know, if you don't do anything else, you know, if you don't do anything else from our conversation today, I want you to think about your profile photo. If it doesn't meet best practice, I want you to think about your headline and how you can optimize it. And then for the love of God, look at your privacy settings. Because it seems like I see this a lot when I'm digging into my client stuff, is that people will have set up their privacy settings in 2009 and then never looked at it again and have a bunch of stuff hidden. So the toggles will be off for like headline and summary and like really like basic stuff that shouldn't be secret. So if you're job seeking or if you want to be found on LinkedIn, make sure that your profile is public and make sure that all section toggles are on so that people can see you and learn more about you. You know, and because we're in the profile, we can't see what others can't see unless we get into our privacy settings. So make sure that it's public because that'll also help you show up in Google searches. So for those of you you know, for lead generation purposes, my LinkedIn is one of the top things that comes up in my Google search. And then make sure all those other little toggles are on. You know, if there's, you shouldn't really be putting secret information out on LinkedIn. It's a public platform anyway, so just open that up for the world.
Deborah, is it right to say the one thing you shouldn't do is have your notifications. Every time you make a change, it gets published. Turn your notifications off. Make sure everything else is public.
Great point. Turn your notifications off. That way you don't have to worry about accidentally, you know, anytime you're in your current role or your past role making a change, it doesn't alert everyone. You can turn that off. That's perfectly fine. But when it comes to how the public views your profile, that's where you want to open it up. But that's a great point, Nick.
Hey, Deborah, someone's asking, they said they don't see the privacy, where the privacy settings are.
So it's under, so if you're looking at your profile and up at the top, you've got your little picture at the very top right-hand corner, and there's a little drop down. It says me. You can click on that and go to settings and privacy is one of those options. And then it's one of the top things in that settings and privacy section. And I can always do a screen share and like physically walk to it if people can't find it. Because I'm doing it from memory right this second, but I think that's where it's at. All right, which brings us to questions.
Oh, ho, ho. Do we have a lot of questions? We have a lot of questions. So I just shared, we've got questions kind of coming through, and because I'm kind of mindful of time, we have 11 minutes left and we're probably gonna eat all that up. So there have been a couple people that have been asking questions on the side, and I've been emailing them, and I actually shared a couple right now. Someone had asked if there's other equivalent networks to LinkedIn outside of the country. So I sent a really good article on Search Engine Journal on 13 other awesome sites out there, networking sites where they can do it. Some are out of the country, some are in, like Meetup.
Yep.
And then I also just shared one, if you're actually looking for a job in another country, you're using LinkedIn, kind of how you can use that to leverage that. So that's kind of cool.
Great.
I provided a link public for that.
Great.
Okay, so let me ask, so as to the questions in the survey was, do you have a specific question for the presenter? The first one comes up, HSMAI. We're going to give a shameful plug. It says, how do I add my HSMAI position under my education in the edit intro section?
Yeah, so that's a really great and timely question, because I read literally yesterday afternoon that LinkedIn made an update and removed that. So you're not crazy. It may not have rolled out to everybody yet, because that's kind of, no pun intended, how LinkedIn rolls. They don't always roll out the updates to everybody, but to improve the official word was to improve user experience. They now just list education and are doing away with listing the current company name. And I think part of that has to do with historic unemployment rates right now, and people are getting uncomfortable. I'm inferring, but so long story short, you can't, but you used to be able to, so you may be trying and wondering what your problem is. It's not you, it's LinkedIn.
Right, let's see, next question. So this one, actually you answered that earlier. I'm gonna go to a follow-up question. It says, kind of unrelated but curious, how should one handle, and this maybe the recruiters can help with this too, how should one handle an employer who laid off an employee but keeps contacting them, asking them questions about how the tasks were done? Ouch.
Sorry, Mitch, can you repeat that?
Yeah, it said, how should one handle an employer who's already laid off that employee, but the employer keeps calling the employee and asking them how different tasks are done?
I'd send them an invoice.
The best way to do it is to say that your new hourly rate is $200 an hour, and you'd be happy to answer that as soon as they sign your work agreement.
Yeah, there you go. And I have a 3-hour minimum to get started. Sure.
100%, Nick. Yeah, I'm thinking of a finger, actually. I don't know. That one's rough.
Okay, that's actually really good advice.
Hi, this is Michelle Carlin. I'd be happy to answer that.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle Carlin, Alignment Advising. I do professional development coaching. I would say the best way to handle that is to let them know if they'd like to hire you for a one-time project fee, that you'd be happy to come back and train for that. But other than that, you're no longer employed with that company, so you won't be able to help them.
That's a great advice.
Yeah, good advice, because it will keep coming. as long as you keep answering the phone.
If don't do this, but on a really passive aggressive note, if you're not familiar with Let Me Google That For You, if someone asks you a really obvious question, you can go into letmegooglethatforyou.com and type in the question, and it'll send them a link to a video that goes Google, and then types in the question, then all the answers come up. So, but I'd go with Michelle.
Ooh, ouch. Yeah, that's not as nice as Michelle. I'm
Well,
just kidding.
my point would be not to burn bridges. And I think it's an opportunity because this economy is going to turn around. And I think if you leave a good taste in previous employers' mouth, so much the better. You know, if you're going to watch cartoons, you might as well answer a few questions. And there's a limit to how many, but I think it would be foolish to turn a previous employer, particularly if somebody calls them for a reference. I think, you know, being a sense of community, I think it would be important to keep good relations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've got another question. What's the number one thing that people do on their LinkedIn page that they should stop doing?
That's a great question. You know, two things. My personal pet peeves, the open for opportunities in their headline and then no other information makes me insane, because you have no idea what kind of opportunities, what they want, what that means, what industry, what they do. It's just it's a huge waste of really valuable real estate. And then again, this is just my personal opinion. The pictures, their selfies in the cars make me insane because they're so ubiquitous and I don't understand why.
And, you know, this isn't your page, but my pet peeve is people who put politics and personal things that aren't work related, that don't give people value.
Yes.
I scroll through LinkedIn and I just start hiding people who don't know the difference between personal and professional.
Yes. That's a great point, Nick. You know, there's no reason, especially if you're a job seeker or if you're really looking for, you know, lead generation, business development, you know, the second you put politics out there, you're alienating half of your audience. And that's not helpful. And I know I've been getting a lot of connection requests lately. And if it's someone I don't know or I'd met through one of these organizations or something like that, I actually go into their profile and look at their activity history and see what they're posting and how they're commenting before I accept their connection request. Because the last thing I would want to do is accept a connection request from someone who's putting, you know, hate or political speech or racist stuff, or, you know, I don't want to get mixed up in it. And it shouldn't be on LinkedIn, but unfortunately some people are confused about that. And so I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point.
And I hear something else. It tends to happen only to women, and on behalf of all the men, I apologize. On our behalf, apparently there's some trolling, people asking personal questions, you know, would you like to go out on a date? Can we meet? And that should never happen either. And I'm so sorry that it continues to, and I'm embarrassed as a man that it does.
That is so annoying when
It is.
when you get the, I like your picture. Where do you live in Virginia? It's like,
Yes. Well, where do you live as women, for the gentlemen who aren't getting this question, it's where do you live makes me insane because that is on the profile. And I don't understand, and it happens to me a lot. I know it happens to a lot of other women. So this isn't about me being special. It's just the things that women are going through. But yeah, there's nothing on my profile that I feel is inviting unwanted attention. I mean, my picture is just my head. There's no inappropriate dress. I don't understand what it is. And I feel bad because the other day I got several trolls or bots that were sending connection requests that were really inappropriate. And it was like 3 or 4 in one night. And then the next morning, someone who was a non-English speaker sent me a message that wasn't inappropriate, but because English wasn't his native language, I kind of took it like I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to get at. And so then I didn't respond on, just to err on the side of caution. So he got kind of lumped in, unfairly, I think, I had just gotten a bunch of trolls. The other thing, and I don't know if men just don't know that it's uncomfortable, but sometimes, a woman will accept a connection request and then a man will just say hello. And it's a really creepy thing to do because it doesn't have any follow-up to it. It's just inviting me to then say something. And then it always, if I say something back like hello, then the next message is 95% of the time crazy. So
Just know you can unfollow those people without them knowing that you've unfollowed them. You know,
It's a great point.
Be selective. This should be a professional platform.
Yeah. And gentlemen, just don't say hello if you're not meaning to be creepy.
To follow up on Deborah, from a recruiter standpoint, for me, the biggest ones is really having a professional photo of you. Again, the same thing. I see so many pets and for chefs, food shots and things like that. It's just really about creating that connection and having a succinct profile that I'm not going to have to spend 3 days going through, but I can still get all the information at a quick glance, but having all the relevant information. To me, those are my two big pet peeves.
Yeah, great advice, Brian.
I'd like to add something really important here, because I think as recruiters, we send out a lot of sort of what I would call cold call messages, where we send an email to someone we've never met, but their background is interesting to us for a particular project. And I would say 9 out of 10 people don't bother responding. I would say this is a great opportunity for someone, even if you're not interested in the opportunity, that you respond to the recruiter and say, geez, thank you very much for thinking of me, but not right now. And try to establish a little bit of rapport and conversation with the recruiter or the hiring manager, because you don't know what's around the corner. I mean, you could lose your job tomorrow, but now you have a connection with a recruiter. You say, we discussed last week about this opportunity. I'd like to connect with you. Do you have something now? And it takes the place of phone calls, and it builds bridges that can be used in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely.
Eden, that's a great point, but I bet your emails are being answered a whole lot better today than they were 6 months ago.
They're always
funny about that.
But they're smart candidates that do this as a regular thing. This is part of their job, because they're laying the groundwork for the future. Because you just never know.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a really great point.
Guys, it is 12 o'clock noon. If the panelists, if Deborah, if you're available for a couple minutes, we do have a couple of questions real quick, and if we can just answer them in kind of a short sentence or so. The first one is, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay. How far back should you go in your employment history to avoid looking dated?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I recommend to only go back about 15 years or so. On LinkedIn, past that, it's probably not the highest level work that you've done. It's probably not the same level of title that you have now. And so it's not really adding to your career story. All it's really doing is aging your experience. If there's a situation where you have, say you worked at a really well-known company and you want that name recognition on your profile somewhere, but it was in the early 90s or beyond, don't include it in your experience section, because you have to add dates. And that's a soapbox I could get on, but I won't. But you can include it in your about section. Put something in there like, I started my career at IBM, something like that. So you can include it in your career story somewhere, but you're not including it in your experience to keep from aging your experience. Same thing with education. I take dates off of all education just so that it's not just at a certain point, because it really only matters that you graduated, not when you graduated. People really shouldn't be asking you that, because they're just trying to suss out your age. So that's a really great question. About 15 years, or to wherever it was relevant. So if the last 10 years is most relevant, stop there.
Okay. Another one, is there a way to rank recommendations? Meaning, can I basically put one at the top because it speaks directly to my current job goal?
That's a really great question. I don't think so. I think they're only, last time I tried to do it, they were only by the time that they came in. So unless LinkedIn has made an update I don't know about, I don't think so. I think they're only like at the time that you received the recommendation.
Okay. And the final question is, and then I have someone shared some really good news with everyone. I'm starting the MBA program. Can I add that to my education even though I'm currently a student, or could I put something as a candidate?
Well, that's a great question. Absolutely include it. Just show that you put an expected graduation date. So if you're going to graduate in 2022, add that number so that, or that date. So that's a an exception to the rule on education dates. Because you want to show, I feel like you need to get credit for the hard work you're doing, and to show, and it shows recruiters and hiring managers how far along the program you are if you have kind of an expected graduation date in there. So yeah, I would certainly include that. Same thing with certifications. If you're halfway towards your, your PMP certification or something like that, go ahead and include it, but just put an expected completion date.
Super, super, super.
Good idea.
All right. All right. So there's one more. Someone said in the survey they had some great news to share, and this will almost make you cry. So there was a family, a photo of a family that was shared on social media of two young girls, and they were using the free Wi-Fi outside of it in the Taco Bell parking lot to complete their schoolwork, and it went viral. And they actually raised $130,000 for that family.
Wow.
So that's some kind of good news to kind of finish on today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
No.
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Thank you.
Yay, yay, yay. So first of all, I want to thank Deborah from the bottom of my heart on behalf of everyone who joined us today. Thanks for a great presentation. I encourage you to connect with her on LinkedIn and just look her up, Deborah Boggs with 2 G's and a DEBRA, and she'd be happy to connect you on LinkedIn. I want to thank our panelists today for sharing their sage advice and their experience with everyone. And most importantly, I want to thank HSMAI and HFTP Los Angeles for putting this whole thing together. Without you guys, I don't think this would be possible. And then some behind the scenes, Emily DiPetrillo and Sandra Martinez, who are kind of the backstops of HFTP and HSMAI LA. And we want to thank everybody for attending today. Our next program is, again, a week from today, same time, September 26th on a Wednesday, 11 to noon. It's a skill building workshop, and our presenter is going to be Professor Nez. You should look him up. He is the biggest podcaster, YouTuber on the planet, Professor Nez, N-E-Z. And if you look him up, he'll be everywhere. But he's going to do our skill building workshop next week. And then the following Wednesday, which will be part 5, is called Leaving the Industry. And that's going to be a really, really great program as well. So I bid you a farewell today. Thank you for participating. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you next week.